Hi everyone and welcome. I am so excited to be chatting today with Karen MacNeil on IG Live. With it being Women's History Month, I've been really reflecting on all of the incredible women in the space who have been such inspirations to me as I've been in my wine journey. And Karen is truly such an idol. She's most known for writing the Wine Bible, which has been a constant companion for me in my wine studies. She also has a long and storied career with several pivots in different mediums along the way. Most recently, she launched her new weekly wine newsletter called Wine Speed, which I have a promo code for, Paige 20. I'll put that in the caption when we post. Thank you all for joining me today. I am so excited to chat with her about staying on the pulse of cutting-edge wine communication and how we as wine industry professionals can reach younger audiences and people who currently seem kind of uninterested in wine. So without further ado, let me go ahead and invite her and get her on with us. Give me one sec. See her there. Thank you so much for being here. Let's see. Here we go. Hi.
Hi, Paige.
How are you?
I'm very good. How are you?
I am wonderful. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Absolutely.
So most people here probably know who you are. You are an industry icon. But I'd love to hear, you started your career at 19 with an article about artisanal butter. And you've kind of dipped your toes in a lot of different styles of communication, everything from books to newsletters to TV shows. So I'd love to hear kind of about how you've seen the landscape change over the year and what kind of trends and shifts you've observed.
Yeah, well, wine needs communicators to kind of help tell its story. And for me as a young journalist, I always thought that that if I could master different types of journalism, I would be better at any given one of them. And so I started out writing, but then moved to radio and did a lot of television in New York. And then, of course, most people know me for the Wine Bible, which is now in its third edition. And then, I'm going to take one of these earphones out. A few years ago, when blogs were becoming really popular, and there were, more than 100 of them in the United States, I thought, I'm going to get into that pool too. In part because I thought it might be helpful to bring kind of Wine Bible level research and fact checking to a fast digital medium. So Wine Speed was born, and it is so great. It's so much fun. As you know, it's super fast, and you can read the whole thing in less time than it takes to open a bottle of wine, but it's chock full of information, and it comes to your inbox every Friday.
Is that
so
we have where the name Wine Speed comes from?
Yeah,
because it's
exactly
meant to be fast and digestible?
Yeah, and I think people have changed the way they want to consume information about wine. When I started out, there would be like these long articles, gray page after gray page after gray page. Look what we're doing right now, right? We're talking on Instagram. It's a much different, faster world. So, Wine Speed gets its name that way, and it is super fast, but it's also super fun.
I love that, and I've been really enjoying reading it since I subscribed a couple weeks ago. It's been really a pleasure of my week.
Thank you. We spend a lot of time making sure that that it's fascinating. And one of the reasons that we all love wine is because all of the culture and history and food and art and lifestyle that sort of gets threaded through wine is inherently fascinating. So, yeah.
I love that. And so why did you decide to do a newsletter as opposed to other platforms that you're on?
Well, in part because I felt, and I wish there was a different word than newsletter, because it just sounds so I don't know, old and uninteresting. But having done books, which are, the Wine Bible, the first one took 10 years, and then the second one took 5 years, and this last one took 4 years. So I'm getting really fast at books. But I wanted to do, in addition to the Wine Bible, I wanted to, in a sense, turn the binoculars around and do something that was completely different. But wine speed is so graphic, as you know, and it's interactive and it has videos. And so digital media just gives everyone like you and me so many more possibilities to communicate about wine.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because I feel like a lot of what we look at as wine influencers now, people who started on social media, work backwards. So they start on social media and then they end up creating a website or a blog and then a newsletter and then maybe someday a book. But for all intents and purposes, like if you think about what the word influencer means, like you are an OG wine influencer. It's just started in a different space and evolved into what it is today.
Yeah, well, I mean, part that's just from being older than you, right? When I started there, the concept of influencer didn't exist. Although journalists like me, you really had to sort of, because there, because this was in fact before the internet even, you had to work within traditional media. And traditional media was hard to get into. You had to really know your stuff. And even then, you would have editors who didn't make life necessarily easy for you. When I was starting out, I collected 324 rejection slips before my first article was published. So it was a different landscape than today, where you can, in a sense, set up your own small business and then hopefully watch it grow by virtue of its content. We started out, and we still have, tons and tons of content, and then have created vehicles like books, like Wine Speed, to use that content.
I love that. We had an audience question. Somebody wanted to know where the name Wine Bible came from.
Yeah, I'll tell you, it's a very quick, funny story, but I was supposed to finish the Wine Bible, which wasn't called the Wine Bible all the years I was working on it. It was called, I won't tell you what it was called. It was a terrible name. But anyway, I was supposed to finish it in 1 year. And at the end of the year, Peter Workman, my publisher, called me and he said, okay, so where's the book? And I said, it's not quite done yet. It wasn't anywhere near being done. But anyway, every year this went on for 8 years. And he would call me up once a year and he would say, please tell me you're not like in your pajamas. You really are like working on this, right? And I would say, no, Peter, I'm absolutely working on it, but it's bigger than what you and I talked about. So 8 years go by, it's finally done. I stack all the chapters one on top of the other, and with great nervousness, take a cab down to Peter Workman's office. And I sit there quietly for 45 minutes while he's looking through the manuscript. And I'm terrified. Like, what if after 8 years of work, he doesn't like it, right? So he looks at it and he finally looks up and he says to me, it's terrific, and we'll call it the Wine Bible. And I said, absolutely not.
No?
And he said, what do you mean absolutely not? And I said, that's too big of a statement. It's like, that's a big egotistical statement. We can't call it the Wine Bible. And he said, well, apparently you didn't really read the fine print of your contract, because, and this is true, authors don't get a say on the titles of their book. A title of a book is considered part of its marketing. And you, the author, are considered a subject expert. So you get to say everything that's between the covers, but the title is the publisher's decision. I mean, I nearly started crying, but anyway, Peter Workman said, listen, I trusted you for 8 years and now you have to trust me. This is the Wine Bible.
Yeah. I love that. That's really funny. I feel like, I mean, it's the perfect name, as I refer to it constantly. I know so many people do too. And so, I mean, I get that you
I'm
were
glad.
intimidated by the name, but that's what it is.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. And I thank Peter Workman every day for that title.
Yeah, I love that. What was it initially? Was it still going to be kind of similar to what it was? It just became bigger,
Yeah.
or?
No, I originally started to write a very simple, small book that would maybe cover a few main grape varieties, a few of the major places where wine was made, and a little bit on tasting. Really, just a tiny little book. But the more I started writing, the more I realized that what I wished I had was that I wanted to write the book that I wished I had had when I was learning about wine, because there was a time, I mean, when the Wine Bible first came out, most of the other big books in the world were written by British men, and they were in, first of all, they were very classist, because most of these men were very affluent. They'd all been on the wine debate teams at Oxford or Cambridge. They had a way of writing about wine that was very different than I think an American would write about wine. And so the Wine Bible was the first big book written by an American author, and an American author who happened to be a woman. And that automatically made it, just the tone of it, what it presumed, was very different than most of the big British wine books.
It makes a lot of sense. And I have read a lot of white male British wine books. And yeah, as I think through my favorites, most of them are written by American women. So that's really interesting.
Well, among other things, I mean, you know, Britain is so close to Europe, and a lot of Europeans, when they write about wine, they sort of assume a familiarity, but with European regions. But I remember, thinking Merceau, Montagny, Macon, like where were these places? And were they all, I mean, was one inside the other? So among other things, I think Americans are perhaps less immediately familiar with European wine regions. That might be changing a little bit today, but when the first Wine Bible was written, I think it would have been wrong to assume that everybody knew where Friuli was versus Chianti. Yeah. I mean, right? It wasn't the case.
Yeah. And I think it's still really hard for people who are just getting into wine, unless their parents drank or they have some sort of familial relationship to alcohol. Like when I got into it by reading first Wine for Dummies and then picking up every single other book I could find. But yeah, I really didn't have that base knowledge of anything when I went into it. And so I feel like as wine communicators, you really can't rely on them having base knowledge, depending on who your audience is, but especially not on social media.
Well, the other thing that is really interesting, I think, is, sometimes when people write, they write in a very formal way. And for both the Wine Bible and Wine Speed, I write in a conversational way. Mm-hmm. In fact, in many ways, I think digital media I was really ready to work in digital media, because I think about wine in a conversational way. And neither Wine Speed nor the Wine Bible are written in sort of very formal English. They're written as if, in fact, many people write to me saying, I feel like you're just sitting there talking to me. And that always makes me feel so good, because I think Americans like that style of writing. I like that style of writing.
Yeah. I think younger generations really like that style of writing. And I think that's, when I look at people who are doing very successful on social media, it's people who are more conversational. It feels like you're talking to a friend. Yeah. It's not hoity-toity. Did you feel like it was kind of a natural progression to go from writing to also being on social media? Because you do have a very good presence here as well.
I think think so. In part, what helped me maybe was starting out my career in New York in talk radio. I mean, I was writing, but also doing a lot of talk radio and then eventually television. And so you learn in both of those situations to not be afraid of a camera, to not be afraid of making a mistake, to being able to be expressive in a digital format. And yeah, especially radio. I mean, I did a show in New York for many years called Living Well in New York. It was a 4-hour live radio call-in show. And yeah, it was almost like social media. I mean, like digital media before digital media existed. It was fantastic.
Yeah, that's really cool. Was that also wine related or completely different?
Yeah, you know, we covered everything. We covered, well, everything lifestyle oriented. A lot of talk radio in those days in New York was really politically oriented. And so I said to the owner of the radio station, you know, what I would like to do a show on is everything that is not politics. So wine, food, restaurants, psychology, health, sports, beauty, everything that except for politics, because politics was already covered by a lot of people. So yeah, and New York was, you know, sort of ground zero for talk radio, and there were lots of subject experts in all of those fields. So it was fun interviewing people in, you know, just from this huge wealth of knowledge in various lifestyle fields in New York.
How did you end up foraying and becoming specialized in wine then?
You know, I think that in the beginning, when I was writing, well, in the beginning, I was trying to write about everything. But eventually, the first piece that I sold was on butter, of all things. I got paid $30, the best $30 ever. And I realized that I loved writing about food. And I was also pretty poor. And so writing about food was great because chefs gave you samples, gave you tastes. I mean, I just thought, this is fantastic. I'm going to write more about food. And I had always loved to cook. But the more I wrote about food, the more I realized that what I really liked was the whole world of gastronomy, like dining behavior, the invention of manners, glassware, like how did all this stuff evolve? And of course, part of gastronomy are beverages, and the big four beverages throughout all time, all history, are coffee, tea, beer, and wine. Those are the four beverages that tell the stories of every civilization. And so I began to study, and coffee, tea, and beer, you can kind of teach yourself, and you can read a lot about them. Wine was harder. It was harder both economically, and it was harder to learn about, because wine is so idiosyncratic in many ways. But like everyone else, the more I started learning about wine, the deeper and deeper hooked I got in. And even today, now all these years later, I think of wine as the biggest head trip in the world. It is just inherently fascinating. Nobody ever falls out of love with wine. Nobody says, people will tell you, oh, I caught the wine bug. Nobody ever says, I'm done, forget it, I'm not interested in wine anymore. Once you're in for life.
That's so true. There's so much depth and breadth to wine. Like, it covers everything from history to geography to culture to food, science, chemistry. It just covers so many different things, and they all go so deep, and it's impossible to know everything. I think that's what first drew me to it.
Yeah. There's an interesting question from the wine militia there about which heyday of magazines was in the 80s and 90s, and magazines have never been as successful as they were during those 2 decades. And I remember one of when you wrote for a lot of magazines, as I did, you couldn't just write in your own style because you had to write in that magazine style. And, the New York Times had a very definitive style. If you were going to write for them, you had to write in a New York Times kind of way. And I remember feeling like it would be a mark of professionalism and success if I could write in the style of many different magazines. And one week, I had pieces in both Playboy and the New York Times. And I thought, okay, that's it. I have done it now, because Playboy, the tone and the style of Playboy is, needless to say, or was, very different than the New York Times.
I had no idea. Was that also wine related?
Yeah, they were both wine pieces. Yep,
I had no idea there were wine features in Playboy.
Well, as people used to say, they bought Playboy for the reading. Uh-huh. Yeah, we know what that means. But anyway, in the early days, probably every writer in America wanted to write for Playboy because they paid more than any other magazine, except for maybe, Cosmopolitan paid a lot too. But writing for all of these different magazines was really a blast, because you had to change your style and you had to be really adept as a writer to attempt their style.
Yeah. So it seems like you've been very adaptable since the beginning in terms of writing styles. And then, when I think about our current state of the industry in terms of both wine and media, like, it's evolve or die. Like, you have to constantly be changing and adapting and figuring out how to stay on top of current trends. And you've done such a great job at that, at keeping your personal brand alive and offering meaningful value to your audience. Could you speak to how you think you've done well at that, and what other people could also bring to the table in terms of wine communicators?
Yeah, I don't know, maybe it's desperation, Paige. It's like, right, you've got to keep changing, or you will be left behind. I'm only partially kidding, because, it's no secret that journalists aren't usually paid a lot. And so if you, I don't know, to make a go of it, you really do have to sort of be very nimble and very creative, and in a sense really fast on the take. You've got to be in the forefront. But the other thing, I suppose, that I believe today is that you can't let rejection get to you quickly. There are a lot of blockades, right? There are a lot of blockades for women. It's hard to get your foot in the door. It's hard to be taken seriously. It's hard to get paid a living wage. All those things are true. But if you let those things stop you, then you will be stopped. And so you have to just keep figuring out how to run around all of those blockades that might be put in front of you, not take any kind of rejection to heart, and just keep going. And for better, for worse, I don't usually take no for an answer. I just kind of keep going and figure that somehow I'm going to figure this out, and it's going to all work out.
I love that. I think that's so important. If you never ask, the answer is always no. And I don't know, I'm a ask forgiveness, not permission type person. So I resonate with that a lot.
Yeah, that's great. Well, how did you build your little mini empire here?
One day at a time, one thing at a time. I feel like it's a conglomerate of everything that I love. I love photography. I love wine. I love digital marketing. That was my pre-wine career, was working in e-commerce for major retailers. And so it just really combined everything into one space. And I started it just as a way to share what I was learning about the WSET3 as I was going through it. And I was coming up to Napa all the time. I was down in the South Bay when I started Wine with Paige. And it was really just a passion project, kind of a personal journal. And it evolved from there. And I just realized how much I love sharing winery stories and the places I was going, and trying to get more people connected into the industry and more people to care about wine. Because like you said, once you fall in love, it's just this whole new world. There's just so much there. And I just really wanted to share that love.
That's great. You know, it is, we are so lucky in that regard because there is nothing like the wine business. It is so inherently generous, right? It's full of amazingly wonderful, good, generous people. And it's because wine itself is, you know, it's the original communal beverage. I was thinking this morning about this book that was written by an anthropologist some time ago. His name, it was Lionel Tiger, and he wrote a book called The Pursuit of Pleasure. And the thesis of the book was that were it not for sharing food and sharing something good to drink, mankind would have just thrown in the towel a long time ago. People would have thrown themselves off the cliff. Life was just too hard. And that pleasures, simple pleasures, something good to eat, something good to drink that you share with other people, those were the evolutionary pleasures that sustained mankind. And I think he was right about that. Because all these years later, you know, it can be as simple as, I don't know, a taco and a glass of Zinfandel or something. But the pleasures of those two things outweigh so many other, outweigh the importance of maybe, you know, a fancy car or fancy clothes. I mean, there's a reason that food and wine are so pivotal, so moving to people.
It's so true. And I was just at a winemaker dinner where there were a bunch of wine industry people, and we went around the table and said our favorite wine experiences. And when you boiled them all down, it was really about sitting down together, breaking bread, eating food, drinking wine, and that experience of being together, that community that wine brings. It transcends everything.
Yes, it does. Thank you, wine. Thank you, world, for that. Exactly. Yes. Yeah.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for joining me today. Do you want to give one more last quick plug for the Wine Speed?
Yeah, actually, if people want to sign up, they can just go to winespeed.com and or follow you, because I think we're going to give you a special discount. So if you are a follower of Paige and you'd like to see Wine Speed, she will let you know the code to use, and we'll give you a discount for Wine Speed. It is, but come join us. It's a community of great wine lovers, fabulous content, and I promise you will love it every week. So thanks, Paige. It's been so much fun talking with you as well.
Yeah, thank you so much. And that code is Paige20 for anyone who wants to use it. I'll put it in stories when I post this as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Look forward to talking to you again soon. Have a good night.
Excellent. You too.